Hi everybody and welcome back to another video. So in this one I'm going to be talking about world cinema. So of course, as we know, the film industry has become a global empire in the name of Hollywood, and it's been Americanized, and we've seen a lot of different kind of things evolve in the film industry, from stardom to technology to the way that we tell stories and a number of different things. Now of course, when you talk about world cinema, it's something that's every other country in the world apart from Hollywood. So that ranges from European cinema, Asian cinema, African cinema, South American cinema, and all those countries from within those continents. And sometimes they're theatrical like Hollywood films are, but they're also very genuine and very humble, that showcase the art and the creativity of people from within different parts of the world. That also shows the expansion of the film industry, which originally started in France, but then it became a global thing within America, and every other country has followed suit. And in this video I'm going to be talking about my top 5 world cinema films, and with a few honourable mentions at the end. And interestingly, some of these films are like auteur films, in which a filmmaker from a particular country or a certain culture showcase their genuine filmmaking style, while there are a few other films that are like dramas that happened during a particular time within that country. So with that said, here are my top 5 world cinema films. So starting off with number 5. So number 5, I've gone with Spirited Away, which is probably one of the most influential animated films that we've probably seen throughout the 21st century so far. And it's a film that really showcased Hayao Miyazaki's filmmaking style. And if you ask my honest opinion, it is truly Japan's greatest contribution to world cinema that we've seen in a long time. And we know that filmmaker Hayao Miyazaki has made some of the most unique and original anime films that we've ever had. This one stands out particularly differently because the film is like from the entire perspective of this one person, but it invokes certain themes that are genuine to the drama of the story. And when you get films that are original, it is about taking risks to a certain extent, but it's also about just generally telling a story that's engaging and fun and entertaining, and from a narrative point of view, makes sense. And I feel a film like Spirited Away and a filmmaker like Hayao Miyazaki is ultimately a celebration of Japanese cinema. And it also showcases how powerful human imagination can really be, in which you can conjure up any kind of story at all. And there are almost no limits to those kind of storytelling processes. And it's the ways in which that can be structured into a certain kind of way. And that's why I think at the time Spirited Away was such a groundbreaking film, and it still is now. So moving on to number 4. So I remember watching this when I was at university back in 2014 during one of the European cinema modules that we had. And what I loved about Bicycle Thieves is that it's a drama that's so authentic to what was going on in Italy at that particular time. Of course, they were going through a situation where they were in ruin, basically, because they'd lost the Second World War, and the people within that country were suffering from poverty, and they needed to find jobs and all those things. So there was a lot of negativity around Italy at that particular time, and because the film was released just a few years after the Second World War, it gave us that genuine and almost very realistic factor about that situation that was going on. But equally, it was still a fictionalized drama, and it was around that particular time that started off the Italian neo-realism movement, in which it was a bunch of Italian filmmakers who hired non-professional actors and improvised a lot on their scripts, shot on location, and had a certain unusual kind of style of filmmaking. And we saw this throughout the 1940s and 1950s, and that's why I feel that Bicycle Thieves is the best of that particular era in Italian cinema. You could also look at it and think to yourself, why is this film not a documentary? However, it's still a fiction film because the characters within the story are fictionalized. There is a script involved, and yes, they are shot on location, but the point is that the entertainment factor about the story gives us an insight into what was going on, whereas a documentary will just tell you the facts. And we also, as the audience, get an impression of what life was like for the Italian people at that particular time. And again, it's interesting about how the film balances between having a documentary-like context, but was made as a film. I mean, even the main actor, Lamberto Maggiorani, who plays Antonio, at the time, he was a factory worker who had zero experience with acting, and the directors were like, you know what, this guy is someone who will give us that message and will give us not an Oscar-winning performance, but will give us an insight into what was going on in Italy at that particular era in their history. And that's exactly what this film was trying to showcase, and that's why it is truly one of the most genuine and authentic contributions to Italian cinema that we've seen. So let's go to number 3. Now, Nosferatu is a film that I was first introduced to when I was doing my film origins module at university, and that was something that was really eye-opening in terms of giving us that insight into the history of cinema and how those origins really influenced how we look at films now. And Nosferatu does that because that's a film that was influential for the horror genre going forward, but equally it was something that was part of the German Expressionism movement, which was an era during the early 20th century in which we saw very oblique and very unique kind of styles, because there were films with very unusual sets that were almost like paintings, and just the over-exaggerated makeup on their faces, the very unusual camera angles, and amongst other things like that. And that was also a film that was a valuable contribution to silent cinema, because when you watch silent films, it's just obviously silent, and the only bit of dialogue you really get is the things on the screen, and everything else is body language, and that's how the story is told. And it was really good how, even after over 100 years, which is mind-blowing, as of last year, the ways in which the film really kind of reflects the horror factor within the story still now to this day is truly mind-blowing. And when you look at the context around Nosferatu, it's based on Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it's one of the earliest film adaptations of that book. But I think this still stands out for me, the ultimate version of that classic novel, and it's a testament to German cinema around that particular time when, obviously, in the First World War they'd lost it, and they showcased their form of art within cinema via the German Expressionism movement, a lot like how Italian neorealism was within Italy after the Second World War. And there is a film called Shadow of the Vampire, which is a story that is about the making of Nosferatu. So if you haven't seen that film and you did like Nosferatu, then I would definitely check that film out. So next up, number 2. Now, I'm a bit biased with Pan's Labyrinth, because if I had to choose any kind of genre that I love watching the most, it would be fantasy drama, because on one side it's emotional and dramatic that will pull at your heartstrings, while at the same time, from the fantasy side, it's something that really kind of plays with your imagination, and you really see something unique and extraordinary on the screen. And that's exactly what Pan's Labyrinth did, because we know it was made by filmmaker Guillermo del Toro. And I think the way that the film really just blends the emotion, the drama, the heartache, the anger, and just the imagination of this film worked absolutely perfectly. Because on one side of the story you've got the Spanish Civil War going on, where they've got a ruthless captain who is probably one of the most detestable and hateable villains that you could probably ever see in film, while on the same score there is a young girl who is seeing all of this war go on, and it kind of provokes the emotions of innocence within a very difficult situation, and she finds this fawn and she has to fulfill a few duties, and it almost becomes like a distraction of the realities of what's going on, which of course, as I said, is the Spanish Civil War. And that's what I loved about Pan's Labyrinth, because it was a film that really did celebrate Spanish cinema, of course talking about the Spanish Civil War from a Mexican filmmaker. But regardless, Pan's Labyrinth is truly one of the best fantasy films I think anyone could ever watch, and it's a really good depiction of the innocence of youth and childhood within the horrifying realities of life. So now I've listed 4 of my top 5 world cinema films, so let's go on to number 1. Now, Parasite is a film that is truly one of the best films that I think I've probably ever seen in my whole life. I remember watching this in the cinema and coming out of it and thinking, I want to watch that all over again. I mean, you can watch my video review that I did of this to my initial reaction of the film when it came out back in 2019. But even now, and I think in years to come, it will truly be one of the most studied films that I think we'll probably ever see. And I still think it's probably South Korea's best contribution to cinema. The film did go on to win the Academy Award for Best Picture, which of course was the first foreign language film to have officially received that award. And that particular occasion gave me great pride, because when you think about films that did go on to win Best Picture, you think to yourself on occasions, why did that win it? That did not deserve it at all. Why was that film not nominated? Oh, it was a really good film. It did completely deserve it. You know, there's numerous different reactions, but I think with Parasite winning it, I thought, you know what? There aren't many films that truly deserve it more than that film, because as well as being a really engaging, intense thriller with such an incredible script and beautiful directing, it was also a very eye-opening story in terms of representations of the Korean people, because it was a film about social inequality and status. And I think sometimes when you do get politics that are extrapolated into a certain type of genre within film, in this case thriller and black comedy, that's what makes them great. And that's what Parasite did so well in, and that's why, like I said, it's a truly deserving Best Picture winner, and it's probably one of the best Asian films that we've probably ever had in cinema. So that's why I would rank Parasite as number 1 in my top 5 world cinema films. Now I'm interested to find out what your thoughts are on this video and what your top 5 world cinema films are, because when you think about world cinema, as I said at the beginning of the video, it's quite vague, and they can be films from any country in the world at all, such as Brazil, India, China, Argentina, South Africa, Ukraine, Poland, etc. And that's why I want to know your thoughts as well, because there are a number of other films from different countries that I haven't watched yet. And like I said earlier, there will be some honourable mentions at the end of this video that didn't quite make my top 5. So what did you think of my top 5? Are there some in this video that you would have included as well? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you did want to enjoy this video, then please hit the like button and subscribe for more, and to have a notification bell ticked so you're notified when I upload a new video. And I'll catch you in the next one. Take care, everybody.